Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Dan Goldman sticks his foot directly in his mouth when it comes to the Trump indictments, and Wesley Hunt is there to clean up after the damage with the perfect take. Let's dive in.
As a representative of New York City, and a former prosecutor in New York, I resent and object to the insinuation from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that a jury of 12 New Yorkers cannot issue a fair and impartial verdict. And I'm sure that if I said a jury in Wisconsin could not issue a fair and impartial verdict because a defendant was a Democrat, you would object too. And you should, because it's baseless. All of these accusations about lawfare that we hear over and over and over again have no evidence to support it. You say the judge in that trial was politically motivated. Why? You say the judge was motivated? Is it because his daughter works for a digital fundraising firm, that all of a sudden that's politically motivated? That the jury, you can't get a fair trial now in New York?
I recognize the gentleman from Texas for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, the past few years, the left has used every weapon, including weaponizing the Department of Justice against President Trump. But of course, they didn't stop at the DOJ. The left used state and local prosecutors to do their biddings as well. Do you remember the so-called hush money case in New York? This is the case that was led by Matthew Colangelo, the former number 3 at the DOJ. That's right. A high-ranking DOJ official left his job to work for a local DA's office. That's pretty ridiculous and does not pass a smell test to anybody that's competent. And of course, there's the so-called RICO case in Georgia, as if this guy was Al Capone. Thanks, Fannie. And then there's Tish James. She ran solely on prosecuting Donald Trump. Now, isn't her main job to protect New Yorkers? She was clearly distracted. And you cannot tell me that these cases were not politically motivated. And if President Trump were not running for president again, none of this would have happened, period. None of this would have happened. What people have got to understand is that this is really, really good for fundraising for Democrats. But I'm going to say the quiet part out loud here. They want the veneer of legitimacy. You may have forgotten this, but again, they threw everything at President Trump. They impeached him twice. They tried to remove his name from the state presidential ballots. They laser-focused Lady Justice to eliminate the competition. And how did he survive this? Because he is clearly not like the average person. He is a political force of nature. What happened over the course of the past 4 years to President Trump should shock everyone in this country. Because one thing he would always say on the campaign trail was this: if he could do it to me, they could do it to you. I'm just standing in their way. This is repulsive behavior that we saw from the left to prevent a man from becoming the president of the free world. And guess what happened? We, the people, saw right through the crap, and we still made him our 47th president. Thank God for the resolve of the American people. Mr. Epstein, I have a question for you, sir. Thank you for your work to expose weaponization against President Trump. You referenced that the Alvin Bragg case was coordinated with Biden. And for those of us at home, can you walk us through this process and kind of how it happened? And can you explain how Biden and his fingerprints were all over this operation?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. So I wish we could tell you what the documents would reveal. That's still up in litigation. But what we did at America First Legals, we obviously used a FOIA request to Main Justice to look for communications with the New York District Attorney's Office. And the response, consistent with what Attorney General Garland said to this committee, was that there were no responsive records. And so what we did is what any good investigative lawyer does, is you send a similar request to the district attorney's office in New York, the Manhattan DA, and you say, give us all communications with the Department of Justice. And while they didn't disclose those records, they said there's 36 responsive records, which suggests that, in fact, there were communications. And it's important for the public to know what was said in those communications.
Thank you very much for answering the question. And I also want the American public to understand something. The reason why the left is still railing on President Trump, even though he won the presidency, we won the Senate, and we were able to keep the majority in the House, is because, quite frankly, they have nowhere else to go because this lawfare fell flat on its face. We cannot allow this to happen again in the future of this country. That's why we've got to understand our history and how this works. We have to understand that we are a constitutional republic, and we must protect the average citizen in this country, ranging from President Trump to the average person that works every day here in America that makes a decent wage to just take care of their family. Everybody must be treated fairly under the law, regardless of what they do or regardless of what they aspire to be.
When you want to scold someone but want to do it politely, you just ask Wesley Hunt. And this is a brutal takedown of Dan Goldman. And Dan Goldman stuck his foot square in his mouth. He made a bombastically stupid statement. And I am shocked that he was dumb enough to say this out loud. He basically admitted that as a prosecutor himself, he would have no problem trying someone even if one of his family members stood to financially gain by trying said person. Judge Merchant actually had a daughter that was working for a fundraising organization designed around getting Donald Trump and grifting off of that. When that happens, you need to recuse yourself. So even Dan Goldman, who's one of the nicer Democrats, he's more pleasant to deal with than a lot of them. Even he's admitting that he has no reins on his brain, right? There's no one up there in the controls that say, hey, maybe we should stop with this banana republic-style nonsense. Maybe we shouldn't treat our political opponents like what would happen in a third world country, where you would arrest your opponents all because not only do they disagree with you, but they represent a threat to your political power. If there's anything that's anti-democratic, it's the Democratic Party. Hey, real quick, did you know thousands of Americans were jumping on the #1 precious metals offer in the country right now? And they're turning to my new partners, the #1 precious metals company, GoldCo. If you've got over $50,000 in retirement savings, you might qualify for an exclusive offer from GoldCo. We're talking about up to 10% back in bonus silver just for taking the opportunity to protect your savings. This isn't one of those sketchy free gold deals where they come with a whole bunch of strings attached. Nope. When they say get 10% back in bonus silver, they mean get 10% back. No gotchas, no fine print used to trick you, just your 10%. Plus the first-class customer service. Plus the great buyback program. There's a reason GoldCo has won a bunch of awards. They are the real deal. So go to PolitibralGold.com. You'll get a free 2025 gold and silver kit and learn more how to get your 10% while learning how to protect your savings. It's a win-win, but don't wait as supplies are limited. Go to PolitibralGold.com. That's PolitibralGold.com. What an irony. And then this take ages like fine wine from Wesley Hunt's perspective, because now the $464 million lawsuit against Trump, it's been dropped. This is a huge win, and I'll take it straight from the horse's mouth here from Alina Habab. There's Hababa, and I can't believe I'm having trouble pronouncing that. Shame on me. The court struck down the outrageous and unlawful $464 million penalty, confirming what we have said from the beginning. The Attorney General's case was politically motivated, legally baseless, and grossly excessive. This is now the modern status quo. This is the Democrat Party. This is their mantra. They now have realized that they have pushed themselves so far to the edge that they have no choice but to go over said cliff and go overboard in order to get at their political opponents. This isn't about going after Trump. It's not even about going after the American people. It's about keeping their power. And they know that they've screwed something up. I think deep down, most elected Democrats have to admit to themselves, they know that they've got to keep talking like this. They know they got to keep pushing in this direction, because if they don't, they'll get primaried by someone even crazier. Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that it's not just the Democrat politicians. They're doing the will of their constituents. Their constituents have had their brains completely rotted out. I have had to deal with these people in person. I've had to watch friends wave no king signs, and I will just ask them honest questions, and they fumed at me on social media. I lost a ton of friends that week. Granted, this is addition by subtraction, but there's a growing mental illness on the left, and it's percolated all the way down to where even some of Gen Z has gone this crazy. Okay, this isn't just rich white liberals, it's their children. These people do not understand that they have fundamentally screwed something up, that there might be something wrong with the system. There might be something wrong with our education system. There might be something wrong with our Hollywood culture. There might be something wrong with higher academia. There might be something wrong with our food. They don't bother to ask themselves that question because it would be a tacit admission that they have been asleep at the wheel. And so their only options are apologize and go away, or double down on the crazy. They've decided to double down on the crazy. The vast majority of them have. Because we have lost this sort of collective shame in America to say, you know what, I've gone too far, I need to back off. People in the Democrat Party like Dan Goldman do not understand that they have screwed something up, that something has been gummed up in the works along the way, and he doesn't have the guts to admit it, and instead has doubled down on the exact opposite. Again, if you are a judge and you are prosecuting, if you are in charge of a case where this person, let's say someone wants to bring a case up against me, but they've been one of their family members raises money by trying to grift off of a court case related to me, that judge needs to recuse himself. And Dan Goldman, despite being a part of the legal system himself, being a former prosecutor, doesn't have the understanding to admit this. This is a basic, fundamental tenet of legal theory, that if you are too close to a situation, you need to recuse yourself and let someone else handle the problem. This is what justice looks like. This is what democracy looks like. And the Democrats ran roughshod over it. And now an appeals court has thrown out the Letitia James allegations against Donald Trump. Now, she's going to appeal this, so it's going to be an appeal of an appeal. But when you run an entire election, and Alvin Bragg did this too, when you run for office and your one job is to say, I am running for office so I can get Trump, that person needs to be removed at some point in time, needs to be removed from the case so someone else can handle it. That is what good legal theory should be doing, and of course the Democrats are running roughshod over this like some military dictatorship or a banana republic. This is lunacy that can only lead to the destruction of the American democratic system. And it must be stopped before it goes completely off the rails. And that's why we re-elected Donald Trump. That's why we did it, because we know we're at a precipice. And we do not want to fall into the chaos that is this abyss that the Democrats seem to be spelunking into without any climbing gear. This is insanity, and it needs to stop, and it's finally starting to stop, all because we voted the right way in 2024. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.